Hello and welcome to East versus West, a Hearts of Iron game, the review. So if you guys come to my channel and you watch my channel, you'll know that I played East versus West, a Hearts of Iron game for about a short time, but I played it nonetheless, and I figured, hey, why not do a review for it? And I do know that it is an unfinished copy for any of you people out there that are like, oh, but the game's not finished. This is as far as the game's gonna go, unless they have a new patch, and I haven't seen one. So, but this is East versus West, a Hearts of Iron game, and East versus West, a Hearts of Iron game was a game that was supposed to be and was intended to be a successor to the popular Hearts of Iron series, a game which, of course, you play from 1939 or 1936, I believe, to 1950, which is the World War II era, the fall of Nazi Germany. This game was supposed to pick up after the fall of Nazi Germany and the defeat of Hitler's Reich, and it begins in January 1st of 1946, which is really when the Cold War begins. The game is set in this era of uncertainty, really, with the breaking up of the Axis powers and the growth of two major superpowers, the US and the Soviet Union. Now, the game's timeline runs from, of course, January 1st, 1946, one of the starting tabs, and it runs as far as January 31st of 1991, I believe, is when the game ends, which is the historic fall of the Soviet Union, quote-unquote, and the end of the Cold War. Now, within that time frame, there are 5 tabs to play from. You can play from the Cold War Begins, which is January 1st. You can play from the Arab-Israeli War, which is May 14th of 1948. You can play from the Korean War in 1950. You can play from the beginning of Vietnam in 1961. And the last bookmark you can play as is the Afghanistan War, when the Soviet Union invades Afghanistan in 1979. Now, with any or more rather unlike any Hearts of Iron game, which only allows you to play as the, tabbed nations here on the front, this game allows you to play as any country during the Cold War. Any of them. Pick a country, you can play as it. You want to play as North Korea? Deal. It's done. You can play as anyone. And that, it really shows the significance of all the countries during the Cold War. You can play in volatile regions across the world during this time frame, from Vietnam and Indochina to the Korean Peninsula to the Chinese Civil War. There are just so many interesting points in time to pick from. Now, let's get into some gameplay. I'm going to just choose a country. Let's play as Indochina just for the sake of playing the game real quick to show you guys the tabs. So, before I do anything, actually this is probably a really good starting point. Before I do anything, they've added in the DEFCON system and the Doomsday Clock. So as you can see, we are at DEFCON 4. So whenever you are at war or something happens in your country, if there's a lot of militancy, if you're really on edge, the DEFCON system will go up. And DEFCON is your nation's alert posture to nuclear war. And anytime something happens, if you're involved in a major war, if you're involved in anything, DEFCON moves up, and once you've attained peace, DEFCON will go down. Tied into the DEFCON system is the Doomsday Clock, and the Doomsday Clock is a symbolic clock, but in the game, depending on all the combined wars and problems in the world, the Doomsday Clock will either move closer to or farther away from midnight, and midnight indicates, of course, the destruction of civilization as we know it. So one of the biggest things that has been added in this game are the 2 alliances, NATO and the Warsaw Pact, obviously. The 2 factions are, at odds with each other. And every couple of years, they hold an election to see who will be head of each alliance. So theoretically, if you're playing as a smaller nation and you have enough influence, you can potentially be elected leader of either alliance. So all the tabs are pretty much the same. You have an economy tab. You have which apparently I'm not building anything. But this is, you build factories and you upgrade your infrastructure and your soldiers and reinforcements. All that stuff is in this tab, is where you build everything. You have the armaments tab, is where you actually build the units, the soldiers, the fighter planes, and the navy stuff. You have the tech trees. The tech tree is a lot more interesting this time than it was in Hearts of Iron 2, which is the one I played the most. But this is a lot more like Hearts of Iron 3. It's very similar to that style. I believe it's running on the same engine. And as you can see, we have a bunch of different tech groups for everything. It also, depending on your alliance that you've chosen, you can research doctrines on or from that alliance that allows you to do different types of things. As you can see, New Democrat, it's everything. It's really cool how they did their political doctrines that you can research, and warfare and units, and it's crazy. There are a lot of different technologies to advance through in this time period, and you can research more than one if you have the money. As you can see, it'll research all of them at the same time. So apart from that, you have the politics tab. The politics tab is huge. I don't remember this being in Hearts of Iron 3, although I haven't played it a lot. But East versus West has a politics tab, and this tab changes how your country operates and what it does and how it does it for the entire game. And you can change it at various points in the game depending on what faction is in power, what election you have in power, what, everything. So as you can see, you have all these policies, and you can change all the policies depending on certain things. As you can see, one of the following must be true to get these things. And it also it impacts on how you work with the rest of the world. You can even go in the armaments policy, the army policy that you follow. You can even go astronautical focus, the space race, if you're one of the, more powerful countries. And you also have of course, you have your decisions, your warriorness, and your political parties, along with all your laws in the countries. Everything that you agree to. So, after that, we have the diplomacy tab. The diplomacy tab really is the same as any Hearts of Iron game. The only difference is there's a United Nations tab, and the UN tab tells you who's in the United Nations and who they are most likely to side with in the event of a war or in the event of a conflict, and who they are more likely to vote with if a vote is brought before the UN. As you can see, Argentina would not vote for themselves. Argentina would likely vote according to nationalist China. Belgium would vote according to the United Kingdom. So it all depends on your sphere of influence and who they would vote like. Now, there's a factions tab. It's disabled for this country. But if you're playing as one of the greater powers, say the Soviet Union or England or France or the United States, that tab is open, and it allows you to see the factions that are in the game, either the Warsaw Pact or NATO, and who people are rallying to. And of course, last but not least, you have your Intel tab, and the Intel tab really is spying activity, centrifuge, and spying are a huge part of the Cold War. It's the way it is, the way everything is. You can also see your enemies in their spy activity. You can see your enemies' foreign policy and all their policies for everything. So it's pretty crazy. Now, some combat. Let's do some combat. The game works like any other Hearts of Iron game. It is a point and click, draw a box over, and mouse to move your soldiers in any direction game. And it's very familiar. It's a very familiar feeling. It's very easy. Like, I know how to play this type deal. And it's really what it draws down to is it's very, very familiar game, and it's meant for people that have played Hearts of Iron or, or any other really Paradox game. I mean, this has a steep learning curve to it, but not so steep as to you wouldn't know what you're doing immediately, especially if you're a Hearts of Iron 3 player and you're just very knowledgeable about the game. You can sit down and look at this and be like, okay, I know what's happening. I know what I'm going to do. And it's just it's that simple. And it's really a shame that the game was canceled. For whatever reason, I don't know the particular reason, if it didn't have enough funding, if it didn't have the attention it wanted, or they didn't have the time to do it. I don't know. I honestly have no idea. But it would have made an excellent Cold War grand strategy game, of which there are very, very few really good Cold War grand strategy games like this, with the whole political intrigue and the military conflictions and the confrontations and everything. Very few games have that, and it's a shame. It would have been a very good game, in my opinion. It would have been a very fun game to play online with your friends. If it could have been something that would have been very interesting to watch at some point. So that is my review for Hearts of Iron. I give it a pretty good out of awesome, and that's how I'm going to start rating these. It is, for an unfinished game that still needed a little bit of polish to it, it's pretty much done, and it's a fun game. Beside the bugs that cause crashes every once in a while and cause problems, the game is fun. It's like any other Hearts of Iron game, and I know I've said that a lot, but it's true. It's like a Hearts of Iron game. So if you're a Hearts of Iron fan, this would have been your game. So I want to thank you guys for watching this review. This is really my first review ever. So I want to know what you guys think about East versus West, and your opinions on it. If you've played it, would it have been a good game? Do you agree? I mean, I give it a pretty good out of awesome, and pretty good is mid-tier, a little bit higher. It's a good game, or at least it would have been if it was finished. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching, and until next time, stay tuned.